All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another PD Learning Hour here with the Maine Department of Education. For those of you that haven't met me, my name is Jason Anderson. I'm your Visual and Performing Arts Content Specialist at the Maine Department of Education, and we're very excited and pleased to have Dr. Maurice Elias, who is on the faculty at Rutgers University, and he also directs their social emotional learning and social emotional character development lab at Rutgers. I had the pleasure of hearing Dr. Elias give a presentation for a group called C-Day. I don't know what, Maurice, probably 2 months ago, give or take, month and a half or so. And it was really engaging and really awesome. So I reached out to him and asked if he would be willing to come speak to our collection of Maine arts educators, and he said absolutely. So we know a lot of us over the last few months have been talking about the importance of social emotional learning and arts education and the intersection and interconnectedness of all of those. So, and Dr. Elias has most recently been working, and I'm sure he'll outline this with all of you in a minute. He's most recently been working with another arts ed researcher named Bob Morrison and the New Jersey Department of Education, and they have recently created a really awesome crosswalk between their art standards and SEL competencies. And I don't want to steal his whole lesson plan. So before I go any further, I want to just remind you that you can put questions and comments in the chat box, and I'll be monitoring that throughout the course of the presentation. And then with whatever our balance of time is at the end, we'll get to that. And then I know that Dr. Elias is going to have a slide with his contact information at the end as well, so you can be comfortable to reach out to him with any specific questions that you may have. So without further ado, I turn it over to Dr. Elias.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be able to do this. And it'll be even more of a pleasure when I can find my PowerPoint and share it. There we go. All right. So yeah, I've been at Rutgers for 40 years now. And during all that time, and even before, I had been working in this area of social and emotional and character development. But I will tell you that some of the most rewarding work that I've done is the past 3 years working with Arts Ed New Jersey and Bob Morrison and Kira Rizzuto and their fabulous arts education colleagues. And I feel like I've learned more about SEL through exploring the connection with the arts. And so that's one of the reasons why I was so happy when Jason extended the invitation to speak with you, because this is something that, you know, it's a new area for me, even after 40 years doing this work. And so, so very exciting. So in addition to being at Rutgers in the Social Emotional Learning Lab, I'm also the co-director of the Academy for SEL in Schools. And that is a place where people can get an online certificate in SEL instruction or SEL school leadership. And obviously you can be in touch with me to learn a lot more about that or check the website. So we are, you know, we're in a unique period of time. The COVID pandemic has shown us all about the importance of character. And I think one thing that is so implicit that we still have to say it, that the products of visual and performing arts are what everybody is turning to now. And so I think that people are now understanding how important, even though it may have been subtle, that visual and performing arts products have been to everybody in so many ways. And in the same way that character doesn't just happen, artistic creations just don't happen. And there's a lot that goes into them. And one of the things that we're learning, and that we'll talk about, is that social and emotional skills are essential for character development and also for the appreciation of and creativity in the arts. So just a little background about SEL and our brand that we call social, emotional, and character development. We call it that because we are understanding now that if you think of SEL as being skills, they're kind of like the propeller on the boat. They can move the boat pretty far. However, what determines where the boat goes is the rudder, and character is the rudder. So SECD speaks to the need to integrate both social, emotional, and character development when we think about SEL. So that's why we kind of call it SEL 2.0. And everybody's talking about it more. We're talking about it more at various states. You're talking about it. Many other states are talking about it. There's a National Commission on Social, Emotional, and Academic Development that has a website, A Nation at Hope. And at that website, it was 2 years, funded for $4 million by a variety of philanthropic organizations. They set down best practices in social and emotional and academic development policy, practice, and research. That's a very substantial accomplishment, but this is now an international issue. The World Economic Forum, they're not known for being a touchy-feely group. They're kind of a bottom line group. They recognize that for the future, we can't think only about academics, that we have to think about collaboration, communication, and problem solving among the skills that are essential for SEL. So we're seeing now that there's a broad recognition in the United States and worldwide about the importance of SEL. A very key event is the foundation of SEL for US, the Social Emotional Learning Alliance of the United States. And this is a kind of a grassroots organizing outfit to help promote SEL, to support implementation of SEL, and to advocate for SEL. And SEL for US is made up of a bunch of state alliances. And when you look at the map, if you look all the way up at the right-hand corner, Maine is not in orange. So I hope that the arts education leaders will decide to make Maine an SEL for US state. So you would become SEL for Maine. And go to the website.
We're working on it, Dr. Elias. I promise you. It's on our list.
And SEL for US will help. And if you haven't joined SEL for US, in all seriousness, you should, because it's an ongoing source of outstanding resources for SEL, COVID response, culled from all of the member state organizations. And the number has grown since I actually copied this chart from the website. So David Brooks in the New York Times in January of 19 had this observation, that when conditions are ideal, think of all the emotions that are involved in mastering a hard subject like theater. Curiosity, excitement, frustration, confusion, dread, delight, worry, perseverance, and joy. And you've got to have an educated emotional vocabulary to maneuver through all these stages. And in order for these things to happen, we have to have strong, powerful, compelling relationships. And the key thing here is to recognize that even if you've got a lot of content knowledge, without the mastery of these various emotions, it's unlikely you'll be successful. And you can see the link to the article, and I will admit, I took what is conventionally called artistic license. David Brooks' example, he said algebra, but I've said to myself, I mean, algebra, anybody can learn algebra, but who could do theater? So I substituted theater for algebra, and hopefully David Brooks won't mind. There's a lot of talk now about equity, justifiably so. It's been a crucial issue for such a long time. But SEL has a lot to say about equity. And what we understand now is that we have been looking at the wrong equity goals. If you think about what it takes to get a kid to college or get a kid into a job, you're only thinking part way. What we now know is that what determines whether kids complete college and whether they advance in their careers is really more their EQ than their IQ. And by helping kids get to the college door, oftentimes, as you well know, by cutting out things like arts instruction or cutting down arts instruction and cutting out things like SEL in the name of reading and math, we have gotten the kids to the door, but we have not given them the skills, competencies, and dispositions they need to get through. And so as we now think about college completion as the criterion and career advancement and continuity as the criterion, it becomes very obvious that social and emotional learning skills are critical, and that in the future, we will know that caring relationships will be important, even though we don't know exactly what's going to happen. You know, I've had this slide for a while. This slide predated the pandemic, and yet the pandemic has simply underlined the fact that in the future, anything we accomplish requires that human connection. And few things speak to eternal, deep human connection than the arts. So for those of you who are interested in just kind of catching up on social and emotional and character development, this is a smart brief that came out on the topic. And so you can, Getting Serious About SECD is the title. You can follow up and get some more detail. And again, you'll get my contact information so that anything that you want to learn more about, you'll be able to reach out to me after this, and I'll be more than happy to follow up with you. So here's what we know, that in order for kids to truly achieve, we have to think about how various facets of learning are integrated. The idea that kids can go into a classroom and put their emotions in their locker with their books and their coat is ridiculous. That these things are inextricably interconnected. Therefore, the environment and climate we set for the kids, from the minute they walk into the school and the minute they walk into our classrooms, becomes the most crucial determinant of whether they are going to learn and how. And then we have to make sure that we're giving them the SEL skills they need. And then we have to make sure that we recognize that for our kids to succeed in the future, they need different habits of mind than the old NCLB find the right answer habits. Our kids are going to have to become curious. They're going to have to explain their reasoning. They are not only going to be getting feedback from us, but giving feedback to others. They are not only going to be able to answer questions, but they're going to have to ask good questions. They're going to have to become really good problem solvers and outstanding communicators in various media. And so this is really the constellation of what is minimum now going forward for successful and effective education. So here are the SEL skills. There are 5 of them. And again, most of you are probably familiar with them, but they're called the CASEL 5 because the labels were provided by the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, also known as CASEL, C-A-S-E-L. And these are deceptively simple, these skills. There are only 5 of them, but these are the 5 that come into play from the minute we arrive on this earth until the minute we leave this earth. These are the skills of what I call everydayship that navigate us in all the things that we do. And so it includes self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationships, and responsible decision-making. We have to know not only how we're feeling and be able to accurately label it, we've got to know how other people are feeling. We've got to know our own strengths and our limitations, and we have to be able to manage our strong emotions. It is impossible to have a successful classroom without emotion management on the part of the kids and on the part of ourselves. And again, emotion management is literally that. It doesn't mean that you're stifling yourself. It doesn't mean that you're being compliant. It means that you are able to control your emotions specific to the situation, which also means cultural context, and that your emotions are not controlling you. Social awareness means that we are concerned and tuned into the people around us. That empathy is a basic human attribute, and it is learnable, and we can get better at it. These are the reason why these skills are so basic. We are pre-wired for these skills. Relationship skills, the ability to work as individuals, in groups, the ability to lead, the ability to follow. We all need this because in various parts of our lives, including family life, civic life, workplace life, as well as school life, we're called upon to do all of these different things at different points in time. And finally, problem solving and decision making. What can we say? Here we are in a COVID environment. Here we are trying to figure out how we're going to reverse the insidious effects of slavery that are still so apparent around us. And we are going to need to be very creative and effective, persistent problem solvers in order to accomplish those goals. This lovely document can be pulled from the New Jersey Department of Education. So this is their version of what I showed you in the round. It is the set of SEL competencies that were approved by the New Jersey State Board of Education. They're not a mandate, but they are an approval and a recommendation that this be part of education in New Jersey. And this has really been propelling forward many schools and districts in becoming very serious about SEL. So again, no different than what I just showed you, different format, but you can download it along with a lot of other good information from the New Jersey Department of Education website. Let me give you a small example of how these SEL skills are so important. So people are so obsessed now with getting kids to read. Sometimes I feel like when kids are born, they're put into a remedial incubator if they're not reading at first grade level by the first week of their life. It's insane. In our rush to get kids to read text, we are depriving them of the ability to read life. So I advise preschool teachers, kindergarten teachers, to read the pictures with kids before you read the text. And I would say that that is a broader recommendation, that we want to start decoding and analyzing emotions and actions that we see and observe first before we read about them. If you look at these fantastic illustrations, they are depicting emotions in ways that if kids can't pick up, they are in a way emotionally handicapped. So looking at the cat in the hat, we need kids to understand that the cat's not just happy, that that cat is contented and a little mischievous. How do we know that? Well, we know that by looking at his eyebrows, at the nature of the smile, at his folded hands, at his posture, even the way his hat is. The artist is communicating a tremendous amount about emotion, just the way our everyday lives communicate a lot about emotions. And if we are not able to decode them in static pictures or in videos that we can control, imagine how badly we are going to be able to decode and analyze emotions at the speed of life. So here we begin to see how much the artistic world has to teach us about basic social and emotional skills and reading and developing a feelings vocabulary. But there's more. This concept of purpose is something that I think we have come to understand has been neglected. It's about that rudder. When kids walk into a school, even when they walk into a classroom, they need to understand why they are there. What is the purpose? What is my purpose in being in this classroom, in this school? What does this school stand for? What is this class trying to teach me? If I don't know those things as a learner, I am going to be much less likely to be engaged. And I think we all understand that it's one thing for students to do the work. It's another thing for them to be engaged. And when it comes to the visual and performing arts, we're talking about, interestingly enough, something in which almost all kids are engaged already, but they don't think about very much. Just in the same way that so many people have Netflix, but they don't think of Netflix and the time they spend there as engaging in the products of visual and performing arts, but they are. And so it's funny, if you ask people who just finished binge watching something they really love, whether they were in favor of more education dollars going for visual and performing arts of the kind that generated that program, boy, they'd be right on it, right? But when you ask in the abstract, people say, oh, visual and performing arts, how important is that? Well, it's extremely important. In fact, it's been missing in social, emotional, and character development. And it's been missing, I think, in the arts, as we'll talk a little bit about, but not from a lot of other venues. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs said, If you believe you're here for a purpose, your energies will be focused, a sense of mission will give you strength, and you will do remarkable things. You just have to reflect on your time as an educator and when you have felt most energized and focused. It's when you've had a clear sense of purpose. It's when you've been part of a group that is meaningful and you feel engaged and your role matters. We know that purpose has the effects that Jonathan Sachs said. I love the quote from Mark Twain: the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you know why, right? And if you're walking around without a sense of purpose, even though that sense of purpose may change, you feel very unhinged, unmoored. And so you're sitting in, you're absorbing curriculum, but it's not sticking any place because there's nothing for it to stick to. And Martin Luther King Jr. knew this when he said, intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. The idea that we were somehow going to educate a person only in intellect and not in character, something that Theodore Roosevelt identified as a danger, is something that Dr. Martin Luther King also understood. So if we think of the basic necessity of having a purpose, and we think of purpose as being for a greater non-destructive good, i.e., part of our purpose is to be a benefit to other people, and we begin to see the amazing convergence of a sense of purpose in the arts. And so we need to help our kids understand their purpose, and in the same way, we need to spend a little more time helping them understand the artist's purpose. And this is one depiction that kind of takes apart the elements, purpose being that which you love, that which the world needs, that which you are good at, and that which you can be paid for. Now, of course, those of us in education, we may have failed that last part, that which you can be paid for, but we are working in an area that we love, that hopefully we're good at, and the world certainly needs it. So we need kids to be able to think and talk about their purpose and understand that the art that they like, the art that they're learning about, was also created by people with a purpose. So take a step back for a second. When I talk about social, emotional, and character development, or SEL, I see them as basic, foundational, and essential to academic achievement as reading competence, and that they have to be fostered in a school of character. If you're a really, really, really smart person, but you can't read, you're going to face a lot of challenges in your life. And if you're a really, really, really smart person, and you can't read feelings and emotions and situations around you, you're going to be really, really, really challenged in your life. So that's why these skills are so foundational in a learning situation. And finally, what we also know from the research is that all SEL, SECD, all learning has to be trauma informed. Now, if we didn't know that before, we know it now, because virtually everyone's coming back to school in September, having experienced some degree of trauma, either from COVID, either from all the upheavals around related to the incredible killings of individuals at the hands of police. Both people are coming back highly emotionally charged, and therefore all education must be emotion sensitive. We must deal with the emotions first, because if we don't, we're not going to deal with the content of learning effectively. Now, there's a lot of research behind this. I'm not going to belabor this. I will point out that from the teacher's perspective, the red arrow is very important, because what it means is that when you do SEL, SECD over multiple years, and that's what the research says, it's not a panacea, got to do this consistently, you get better classroom behavior and situations. To put it colloquially, the kids become less of a pain in the ass. And that translates into it being more fun to teach them. And when we're having more fun teaching them, they get more receptive. And when they get more receptive, we have more fun. So we get a virtuous cycle that happens. And there's a lot of research that supports this, well over 200 studies. The thing that we have to worry about, though, is that we work in the schoolhouse that's depicted on the top, the so-called jumbled schoolhouse, where we got so many programs and so many things going on. Too many things going on. All of them may be great, but when they all come together, it's a mess. And now we're adding in equity. Now we're adding in all the COVID stuff. And it's just becoming exceedingly difficult to think that we can just add things in. Ultimately, our schools have to be organized. That's the schoolhouse on the bottom. That's the way my team and I work. That we try to nurture civility and service, because we recognize that our kids come to school because they want to matter positively in the world. And if we don't have that conversation and give them opportunities, they are not going to be motivated to learn. So for example, if you think about that, the idea of literacies, including artistic literacy, how many kids would choose to become proficient in an artistic literacy that they had no belief whatsoever they could ever carry out? It wouldn't make sense. For many of our kids, a lot of what they learn in school is not connected to what they feel they can do. And there are socioeconomic and ethnic and racial links to that we have to recognize. Nevertheless, every kid walking into a school should feel they've got positive purpose, that they have contributions to make to the school, as John Dewey said, as well as to the world. And when they feel that way, they become more open to learning. And they feel less drawn to violence, alcohol, tobacco, and drug use, bad health habits, and premature sexual behavior. So let's get back now specifically to the arts. Why the connection? Tom Horn, who I learned recently as a musician, as well as at that time the Arizona Superintendent of Public Instruction, when you think about the purpose of education, there are three: jobs, citizenship, and human beings who can enjoy the deeper forms of beauty, right? These are equally important. Aaron Copland talked about this. I just read a book that he wrote a number of years ago called What to Listen For in Music. He talks about the composer, the interpreter, and the listener, and how the musical product depends on all of those things. And that when you listen to a composer's creation, you're listening to the product of a personality. I love the quote on page 159, no composer can write into his or her music a value that he or she does not possess as a person. And so then we have to ask ourselves, as Aaron Copland suggests, who was this person? When did this person live? What was the context of the work? How did this art get created? This is a way of understanding different artistic forms. This is a way of understanding how artists changed over time and why. It adds tremendous depth to our kids' knowledge to be able to understand that the arts were created by people, people in situations, people who had a purpose in what they were doing. That purpose can be analyzed, debated, improved upon, corrected. That's why SEL can bring such great vitality to the arts. The arts also help with mastery of life complexity. Arts experiences boost critical thinking, teaching students to take the time to be more careful and thorough in how they observe the world. And don't we need our kids to be more careful and thorough in how they observe the world? Observing, analyzing, and understanding art and its production and context are phenomenally important to our kids being better people. So in recognition of that, ArtsEd New Jersey undertook a project in collaboration with SEL for New Jersey to map these SEL competencies, including sense of purpose, with the 4 artistic processes. And there's a website now that you can go to where you can see the literal crosswalking of all of these things across grade levels, so that we're actually creating an integrated arts education and SEL curriculum. And again, this is there for the copying and improvement as anyone would like to, but it flows from a recognition that the ability to engage in any of these artistic processes is connected to social and emotional competencies. Here's how I look at it. That SEL skills attune students for success in activities across all of the artistic processes. And so just try to imagine the artistic processes in the absence of any empathy. Imagine the artistic processes in the absence of any kind of ability to manage your emotions. Again, some of these may be slightly more relevant to some processes than others, but the ability to manage your emotions and regulate your emotions is going to be important as you're busy creating and busy performing. We often have students noticing what performers do as part of their preparation rituals. It's not like they're anxiety-free, but they learn how to manage their anxiety, and that enables them to perform at their best. Problem solving, working in groups, all of these things are important SEL skills that underlie successful activities in the arts. And it also connects to equity. Art reaches a segment of children who have not found their way in another specialty. If we can help these kids find themselves in any way possible, we've helped this generation get along much further. So this is very consistent with Howard Gardner's work in the multiple intelligences. So it's nothing new, but we're coming back to it again and recognizing that for many kids, and you know this as arts educators, you reach them in ways that many others don't. Plus, especially at the secondary level, you may be the only teacher they have for multiple years, which enables you to develop a powerful relationship with them. The reason we need this was summarized in an article in the New York Times in May by Mona Hanna-Attisha. She basically said that she is tired of us talking about the smiling, wonderful little kids on the left becoming the accomplished future citizens on the right by being incredibly resilient. She said that it's unfair that some kids have to go do twice as much to get half as far. And that we have to create the conditions in our schools that allow all our kids to thrive without exercising superhuman capacity. And so that's why we need arts education, unvarnished, undiluted in our schools, because for many kids, that is going to be the vehicle that is going to transform them and carry them as effective learners. Every kid has that. Every kid needs something. For many kids, it's the arts. Arts instruction exercises kids' SEL muscles. That's how I like to think about it. And so here are some of the ways that we do this. When we encourage the kids to set their own artistic goals. When we ask them to devise solutions for individual or group errors. When we help them navigate performance anxiety via emotion regulation, as I was kind of alluding to before. Where we help them be students of anxiety and students of emotion regulation, as well as helping each other in doing that. And we expose students to the power of artistic forms for social change. We have some material on our website for our middle school SEL, SECD curriculum, where we teach the kids all about how to write social protest songs. They start by analyzing social protest songs in the past, and then they move to writing their own contemporary social protest songs. So they come to understand the power of artistic forms for social change. Is it an SEL lesson? Is it a music lesson? Is it a writing lesson? Well, of course, it's all of the above. So when we talk about this, we want to make it clear that it's not that we're expecting the arts teachers to be the SEL instructors, but rather to give the kids opportunities to exercise their SEL muscles. When the kids begin to see that they can be engaged in the arts, they become more of an asset and resource to the community. They feel they have something to share. They feel they have something to contribute. And I think that that's not just for the kids who are in the, in the band, in the chorus, in the glee club, etc. Every kid needs to feel that they've got an outlet for being able to share what they do. And arts educators, you've been doing this all along, but now I think we need to just make it a little more explicit as we're guiding kids to look carefully at a work of art, to understand the emotions being evoked by that work. In other words, to understand that a lot of our kids have a limited feelings vocabulary. And so when we ask questions about the emotions being evoked by that work, we have to push our kids a little more. We have to put vocabulary word walls up. We have to help our kids get better at that because we know how important it is. To discuss the techniques used by the artist to communicate emotions, to understand what did the artist had to do to create this work of art, and talk about civil discourse, to be able to discuss your observations about art in an articulate way and exchange and give and take with people who do not see that piece of art in the same way. Right? So you can see SEL has already been at the center of arts instruction, and arts instruction has already been at the center of civilizing our students. Here's an example, another example of something we do in our SEL curriculum. We have our kids take a look at Norman Rockwell's depiction of freedom from want as one of the 4 freedoms. And we have them look at Hank Willis Thomas and Emily Schur's more contemporary depiction of freedom from want. We have them analyzing similarities and differences. And then we had them understand the context in which Rockwell created his piece of work, in which Hank and Emily created their piece of work. And then we asked kids to think about how they would depict freedom from want. What does that mean to them in their contemporary lives? And then we have them talk about the other 3 freedoms and how would they depict those. So you can see how we're connecting the artistic processes with a deeper social understanding, social awareness, and in many cases, it also bridges into conversations about equity. I'm going to skip this particular activity, but this is the framework that we use called PLAN. It's a problem-solving framework that we use to help kids analyze and create art. So in looking at the 2 pictures I showed you, they would use this PLAN framework to actually go through it systematically. Here are a couple of more examples focused on music. I will acknowledge the fact that I did play piano when I was younger. I actually did play at Carnegie Recital Hall before performance anxiety got the better of me. Group self-reflection on quality of performance, fist to 5, right? About how did they do? How did they do in different aspects of the performance? Giving feedback to classrooms, having kids just continue to talk about the emotion of music and become more and more articulate about it over time. And exit slips with an SEL-based prompt. I can't emphasize this enough. Getting kids to reflect on what they've learned after they've learned it deeply solidifies their learning. It's an SEL technique that will improve arts instruction the way it improves every other kind of instruction. And that includes also thinking about what more do you want to learn? Right. Here's just a wonderful example from Margie Thomas, Campbell Elementary School in Metuchen, New Jersey. She's such a fabulous educator. This is what she does with Peter and the Wolf. She says, I taught the characters, their themes, the instruments, and genre, the basics. Then I asked SEL questions. Now, what did you notice about the music? What does the music tell you about the characters? How does the music make you feel? What now she understands is that it's essential not just to say these questions and have a couple kids raise their hand, that we need every kid to think about the answer and to elaborate on their thinking about it. And believe it or not, in a Zoom environment, you put every kid in the breakout room, they can talk about it in a pair share, they can put their thoughts in a chat box. You can get kids, even if they don't necessarily be the ones to verbalize, you can get kids to think about it and answer. And the same thing is true with the concluding SEL questions. Whose theme do you like the best from Peter and the Wolf and why? Which character do you like the best? Which character do you identify with most and why? And these reflections are building the kids' SEL reflective capacity, which is such an important life skill that we need, especially in times of uncertainty. So it's not as if Margie changed her lesson for Peter and the Wolf. She was already using emotions and such in her instruction. But what she recognized now is that by going a little deeper with the kids, she was going to be giving them significant added benefit. And now, arts educators, you are our early warning communicators. This is something I've talked a lot about with my colleagues in New Jersey. Many kids will express feelings and concerns through their art that they will not put into words. And especially in a visual and performing arts mode that is virtual versus actual, you'll have opportunity to see products and the parts of kids that may be speaking to you about concerns. And so proactively, it's important to build your relationships with student support personnel. So in many schools, what we're doing is we're basically normalizing the idea that school counselor is going to come into our classroom, come into our virtual classroom, drop in to see what's going on, to say hello. And so when you then have a kid who seems to be troubled and you want the counselor to kind of be in the classroom, it will not be a stigmatizing act. You will have normalized the presence of the counselor. And then if the kid then needs to speak to the counselor, in your opinion, there's a sort of a less stigmatized channel of outreach. And the threshold for sharing your concerns in a post-COVID-19 environment should be low. Our kids are coming back with a lot of emotional stuff. They've seen a lot, they've experienced a lot. We are not going to be able to easily know exactly what that was, and certainly not know exactly how our kids felt about it. But it'll come out in their artistic creations. So you've got a very, very important role in the COVID-19 environment in particular to help bring troubled kids to the attention of your student services professionals. Here's another way that artists can be very helpful, and that is designing signage. So this is from JCC Abrams camps in New Jersey, where they engaged some artists in finding depictions that were going to help the campers. And you know, I think we always make a joke that a picture was worth 1,000 words, but I think it's true. I think pictures speak to people, and I think when people see visual images, it has an impression on them. You may or may not like these. You may be saying to yourself, I can do better, and my response to that is, I hope you do. I just send them here as illustrations because I think they're valuable. I think that we should not be relying on our kids to always remember things, even things that should be obvious. And why is that? Because we know about trauma-informed learning. Under conditions of high emotionality, we don't think our best, we don't think our clearest. Therefore, our kids are going to need a lot of reminders, and visual reminders are very, very, very powerful, right? So I think that's something you might be thinking about, ways you can contribute to your schools when they reopen, and of course, even in your own classrooms, that applies equally well. Right. So there are a lot of arts related in COVID-19 resources. Unison.org has amazing lessons that were developed around the Worldwide Day of Gratitude. Teach Rock also has some extraordinarily wonderful lessons that have been developed by Little Steven of Bruce Springsteen's band. He has started a foundation designed to improve music education, make it more engaging to kids, and he's got some terrific lessons that are very steeped in SEL. So the lessons I mentioned about songwriting can be found at our SECD lab website, and et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of sources available. Many of them already connected to music. The YANJEP is the New Jersey Youth Performing Arts organization. They've got resources, things that they're doing. I'm sure you have the same kinds of things in Maine, but it is important to compile them. It's important to curate them and not give people an enormous list that they'll never be able to go through. So it is valuable to curate, and then of course continue to share the best things you find. So just kind of summarize before we take some questions. Increased stress and anxiety. We have to recognize and manage strong emotions and not let our kids lose focus on their strengths. We have to communicate a sense of hope and possibility along with all the issues of coming back. We have to give strong attention to communications that are clear, simple, supportive, and forgiving. And we have to take care of ourselves. We have to make sure we're taking mindful moments for ourselves, strength breaks for ourselves, and make sure that we're not trying to get kids overwhelmed with content at the expense of their emotions. So by attending to the social and emotional issues in how we structure virtual interactions, setting our expectations for students and their work at home, how we take care of ourselves, we are bringing SEL and SECD into the important work ahead. And SECD I think of as a kind of a vitamin and enhancer for every subject, but especially synergistic with the arts. A colleague of mine, Joe Santoro, said that SEL is like PPE for the soul. And I think that if that's true, I think the arts can be right alongside SEL as being PPE for the soul. And so when we open our doors, let's make sure that we don't get back to normal, so to speak, that we recognize that we have to give our kids the spirit of reassurance and hope, that we have to start with heart, spirit, and ethics. We have to really take time to help our kids focus on feelings and maybe select our initial exposure of our kids to artistic works in a way that will help them with their very strong feelings that they're coming in with. In other words, to be very thoughtful in how we begin the school year, live or virtual, and recognizing that the arts represent an essential modality for students and staff to express their deepest feelings and aspirations. So with that, I would open us up for some questions. And let me stop the share so we can see each other. And what I'll do at the end, Jason, is I'll put up my informational slide at the end.
Perfect. Great. Thank you, Dr. Elias, for that slideshow and that presentation and your words and the focus on your work. I think that's fantastic. The chatter in the chat box has been really great about people making connections with what they're doing and what they're experiencing, both in the past and thinking about their future as well. I think probably the elephant in the room, though, that you probably get to talk about with a lot of different groups when you engage them in this way is, you know, if it's so obvious to us as arts educators that we possess the skill set and the engagement with students to be successful with this, how is it then that arts programs end up being some of the first that are eliminated out of schools? I mean, I think about our friends in Randolph, Massachusetts, who were all given pink slips, and the arts department is gone for next year. I mean, at present, hopefully they're going to get reinstated. But, you know, so how, I guess maybe the question then would be, what's a strategy that we can use to engage our school leaders, our community, in acknowledging all the great things that can happen if you are able to retain and even expand your arts in your schools?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I didn't design my argument, my PowerPoint randomly. I designed it to give you materials that that are ammunition, so to speak. And I think, look, many educational decisions are not made by educators. Number one, they're made by quasi-politicians. So we have to understand that. And not there are people in the world that think that the most important thing is math and science and reading. I mean, those folks exist. I personally feel badly for their children. But on the other hand, I have many friends who are in private practice therapy, and they are enriched by that kind of attitude. So there's good and bad. Look, this is advocacy. We've been doing SEL advocacy for many, many, many years. And we've had to get more vociferous about it. I think part of it is recognizing that what's obvious to us is not necessarily obvious to other people, even though it should be. It's just like I was saying about Netflix. I'm telling you, there are people whose lives depend on Netflix now, who don't give one moment of thought to the fact that this is the result of the arts education the Netflix people probably had when they were in school. Zero connection to that. So we have to get out there and say this. We have to communicate to parents. There should be an arts education newsletter going out to parents on a bi-weekly basis that highlights what our kids are doing in the arts, because parents don't see what's happening in the classroom. And if you rely on the kids to tell them, you know, good luck with that. So we've got to take responsibility for correcting the misimpressions that are out there, and also highlighting the strengths, highlighting the successes, highlighting the districts that have kept their arts programs. Find me the district that has found success by getting rid of their arts program. You won't find it. You just won't find it. That doesn't keep people from making those stupid decisions. But then we need to make sure that those questions are seeping into our school board members and that our superintendents are understanding this. And look, leadership from the Department of Education is something that matters also. So that is not, you know, we're not whitewashing that. But I would say this, you know, we spend a lot of time working with our professional associations in New Jersey. School Boards Association, Principals and Supervisors, NJEA, and we are constantly bolstering SEL. And Bob Morrison now as SEL in the arts, he's recognizing that SEL is in the ascendance, and he's linked to SEL in the arts. And that synergy has been valuable for SEL and for arts educators. And so again, the idea that you are the early communicators of problems that the kids are having, that you're linked now to the counselors, is so important. And the idea that when there's an SEL committee, arts educators should be running to be on that committee, because then all of a sudden you have broadened your connection. So that's, you know, I mean, obviously I think about this stuff a lot. It's important to me. On Father's Day, I couldn't see my grandkids, but they created art for me to look at, which I look at. They're probably not going into a career in the visual arts, I don't think, but I love it, and it's very meaningful to me. And so I'm an advocate for sure.
That's great. And I think that I hope that everyone out there is recognizing that Commissioner Macon and me and others are working as hard as we can to make sure that arts are included, you know, equally at the table with everything else, especially when it comes to what it's going to look like to go back to having our school buildings open and having our kids come. And we've been getting some dire news lately, you know, since all through COVID about what it means for like large music ensembles and large classrooms and all of that. And we know that we're going to have to adapt and change. And I think that through our adaptation and maybe being a little more intentionally aware and cognizant of what we can bring to our students in terms of social emotional learning and character development, I think is going to do nothing but benefit us all in the end.
Yeah, could I just give you a brief example of what I was saying? There was recently a 3-day summit on arts and SEL to launch the website and all the articulation of SEL and arts. And it opened with a performance by a jazz band from one of the high schools. And it was but obviously they weren't together. And it was fantastic. And all the attendees were not all arts educators. They saw and heard that. And so here again, we got to showcase stuff. I was just on a leadership seminar for COVID with Steve Adebato from New Jersey, very, very popular educator in New Jersey and communicator. Bottom line, he said that leadership in COVID requires innovation and not waiting. That we have to, not think about the large ensembles that we don't have, but think about what we do have, what we can have, and let's bring back chamber music, the small group stuff. And I've been listening to the Philadelphia Orchestra stuff that they've done with their musicians at home, and it made me a contributor. It's so fantastic. I mean, it's not the same as the full orchestra, but it's fabulous. So there's a lot that we have to share. We just have to not be apologetic about it, and we have to be innovative.
Absolutely. And I think, like you said earlier, this the information that you presented to us today is great as a set of tools and resources for us to go invite ourselves to these conversations and ask for a seat at the table. And that's not always the easiest thing for everybody to do, but I think you need to put yourself out there as much as possible as we start to figure out how we make sure that the arts education have a role in school in the fall, for certain.
For certain.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any other questions, statements, comments? We've got a few more minutes. You'll notice that I put an exit ticket link in the chat box. So if you want to click on that link now, it will open up a browser window or a tab in your browser, and it'll allow you a chance to go through that later.
And maybe while we're closing out, I'll just put my information on the screen.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Elias, for doing that. So yeah, Dr. Elias is happy to have you reach out to him if you have any questions or would like so a reminder of some access to resources.
Yeah, I'm going to put that up in a second. I just want to call your attention to this quote by John Wooden, which is, "Don't let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do." And that the determination to make the progress we can make, as we just were alluding to, is very, very important. And here's how you can reach me. So you can see next to the bottom is my email address at Rutgers. There's also a lot of stuff at the Edutopia blog that you might find useful, including some stuff linked to the arts. And our website has some curriculum materials, but I'm happy to respond to questions. I see Craig asked the question in the chat box about whether so is the recording going to be made available?
The recording will be made available, yeah, through the Maine Department of Education's YouTube channel. So everyone, you can go back there for reference to this and all of these slides if you want.
And I'd love to get that link when you have it.
Sure. Yep. I'll send it right along to you as soon as I get it. Great. As soon as I get it uploaded. Fantastic. So everybody, make sure that you take an opportunity to save the chat. And if you don't remember how to do that, down where you type a message in the chat box, if you click on those 3 dots and select Save Chat, it will save all of that information in the chat box, and then you can access it later on. And if you happen to miss anything and you need additional links or whatnot, reach out to me by email, and I am happy to provide you with whatever you need. So I want to just thank Dr. Elias again for being here today to share with us.
It was a pleasure.
And yeah, I hope you all had a really great afternoon and got some energizing information. and resources that you can start to, or continue to think about what your approach is going to be coming up in the fall.
Great.
And I hope that you all have a lovely afternoon. Thank you again.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to do it. Take care.
Take care, everybody.